All right, to start, we're going to need 2 pieces of chipboard 9 1/4 by 9 1/4. Set one of those aside. You will then need 4 pieces 9 1/4 by 2 1/4. We're going to start out with the 9 1/4 by 9 1/4. We're going to wrap this like we would for a cover for an album. So you're going to use your 1-inch spacers. Your cardstock is going to be 11 1/4 by 11 1/4. I've gone ahead and prepped this with the score tape on the back. So give me a second there to get that off. And this piece we're going to wrap just like you wrap the covers for your album when you're using the Easy Wrap method from Country Craft Creations. So I'm going to set that down using my 1-inch spacer, so there's a 1-inch border all the way around that chipboard. Okay, and we can go ahead and do the same thing with our side pieces. So those again are 9 1/4 by 2 1/4. The piece you're going to use to wrap that is going to be 11 1/4 by 4 1/4. Same thing, you're going to prep the back of these with score tape. You're going to use the 1-inch spacers, and you're going to go ahead and put those down. Not going to make you watch me do all 4 of them because you get the basic idea. Okay, so now that we've got the chipboard wrapped, the chipboard down on the cardstock, I'm just going to burnish that down. And then you're going to use the edge of the chipboard to fold your cardstock around the chipboard. And where it folds, you're going to crease with your bone folder out on the sides there to get a line, a good fold line, so you know where you're going to cut here in just a second. Okay, so I'm going to flip that over, and where you have those fold lines, you should have a square on each corner. You're going to cut those squares out on all 4 corners. And you're just going to cut along that fold line that you made with your bone folder. Okay, once you have those cut, you're going to fold in and just ever so slightly miter those corners. You don't want anything hanging out over the edge, because once you wrap this, it can cause, like little pieces to stick out on the edge. So all you need to do is just kind of fold your paper over. Sorry, I got out of frame right there. And mostly out of frame right there, I apologize. And just kind of, see if it's hanging over, and then just trim anything that's hanging over that edge off. Again, I apologize, I didn't realize I was out of frame. I've got a different mat here, and I usually kind of can tell from that, and I didn't mark to where I'm out of frame with this craft mat, so I apologize. All right, so now you're going to go around, you're going to run glue down the edge of the chipboard, and then you're going to fill in the rest of this. I usually use a combination of score tape and glue, but this time I know Tammy has quit even using the score tape, so I figured I'd give it a try. It does work, but I have some, it's probably arthritis, I don't honestly know, in my right hand, and this is actually harder for me than putting that tape down and using the tape and the glue combination, just because I have to push on a little bit harder and for a little bit longer to get it to stick. So, but you can do it either way, as I'm demonstrating. Because I'm not sure if the problem I'm having with that hand is related to if it's arthritis, which I don't think I'm old enough for that, but I might be, or if it's related to carpal tunnel, because I'm having some issues that I know for sure are carpal tunnel in that hand. So not sure which it really is, but there you go. It's all kinds of fun. So I'm going to get that side down. So you've got all 4 sides wrapped. And you can, once this is done, you can set this piece aside. Okay. So for our side pieces, okay, so for the side pieces, we're going to go ahead and fold all 4 of them around the edges around the chipboard, just like we did with the cover. Scoring with the bone folder, you know, pushing that crease down with the bone folder as you go around. And then we're going to cut the corners out on these just like we did on the cover. But we are not going to wrap all 4 sides of this. So I'm folding these over. And I didn't realize I did all of them in succession like this. I meant to just do one so that I could, so you didn't have to sit and watch me fold all of these, but I don't know, might be good practice for you. Especially if you're new to the Easy Wrap album method, because this is something that, you know, if you start using that method, which I really suggest you do, it's very sturdy, it's much easier, your books lay a lot flatter. And I've adapted that method to making boxes so that you're not having to cut all those little reinforcement strips and, you know, gluing everything together and scoring, you know, all these little pieces of paper to make those little strips. I've come up with a method that I think works quite well, actually, to build boxes without having all of those little construction strips. So that's, you know, kind of the basis here, is the way you do part of that construction for that Easy Wrap album method. So I've got all 4 of those creased. I'm going to come in here. I am going to cut out my squares again, just like we did with the cover. Hopefully I stay in frame for all of this part with this one. Well, I guess we'll see, won't we? I was doing this while I was simultaneously doing something else, which is why you're getting a voiceover again. So again, I apologize. My voiceovers are usually a complete disaster, but they're getting better. They're getting easier, which is really odd, but okay. So I'm a little bit better in frame there. And I'm out again. Of course I am. Okay, so folding over, mitering those edges. And again, out of frame, I've got to put a piece of tape on this craft mat at the point where I go out of frame so that I have a visual reference as I'm looking down, because I'm not looking at the screen. Oh, there we go. That's better. See, I'm folding that in and then mitering that just to the edge of that chipboard. Okay, so we're going to do one of these. All you're going to glue down on these 4 side pieces is one of the long flaps. You're going to leave the other 3 flaps as is, because that's how we're going to construct the sides of our box, is using those flaps to wrap around and reinforce the corners of the box. Okay, so you're just going to fold down one of the long flaps. Okay, and you're going to do this on all 3 of those side pieces. Okay, we'll watch one more and then I will skip to the next step. All right, so let's get the sides on this box. There's two ways you can do this. You can go through and attach those long flaps to the bottom of that, your 9¼ by 9¼ piece, or you can attach the sides and make your square and then drop that piece in. We're going to do this using the method where we're attaching the sides together and then finishing off by dropping the bottom into this. So I'm just getting some glue on that short tab on one of those 4 pieces. It doesn't matter which one. And I'm going to wrap that to the outside of the piece I'm attaching it to. So I'm just pushing those corners together, getting them lined up, pushing the tab with the glue down, and then I've got my clips just to hold it in place and make sure it dries. I'm going to pull that open and get glue on the inside tab that you can see there. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to put that down, burnish that down a little bit, and then I'm going to put a clip on it to hold it in place. We're going to go on to the next one, and again we're going to put that glue on that tab that is going to, excuse me, that's going to wrap to the outside. And again, I'm just lining those corners up. Burnishing that down, clipping it to hold while the glue dries, because I am using a fair amount of glue here. My glue is working really well right now because right before this I spent 25 minutes cleaning out the metal tip and the nozzle and everything else, and it worked great for about 10 minutes and then it clogged up on me again. So I cannot win with this, I'm telling you. All right, so you've got 3 sides there. We're going to get our 4th side, and for some reason my 4th side is like, the height is just slightly off. So as hard as I tried to make sure that all 4 of those pieces of the chipboard were exactly even, apparently somehow I screwed up one of them and it's off. But that's okay because I was able to just line it up with the top corner of the piece that I'm attaching it to. And if I hadn't told you, you'd never know. But so if it, just because it probably looks like I'm messing with that one a little more than I had with the previous ones, that's why. So then we're going to do our 4th corner here, and again you're wrapping to the outside. This one's going to close off the sides of our box. Okay, and again I'm going to grab a clip. And on this one I waited until I'd gotten those 2 sides attached, so I had my base there before I glued down those 2 interior flaps. Wouldn't matter, you could go ahead and do the you know, the first of those 2 the way we had done the other 2. It would be fine. I just thought it was maybe going to be a little bit easier and give me a little bit more wiggle room to, you know, adjust if I needed to by doing those last. So I'm going to clip that again. And then we're going to get the other little tab there that isn't glued yet. I'm just kind of folding that out just a little bit so I can stick the nozzle of the glue down in there and get it covered and stuck down. All right, so there's that much. We're going to let it dry for just a second and I'll be back. Okay, so I let this dry for about 5 minutes just to make sure everything's good and set. I'm just going to go ahead and remove my clips. So at this point, you should be able to take that base piece and it should just drop right down in the center of the sides of the box, like so. So now you can turn it over and glue it from this side and I was having an issue. I was going to take the nozzle off of that and actually realized I have a small bottle that doesn't have a metal tip on it, so that I could get a lot of glue really quickly to get this in here. So let me set that aside, grab a bone folder, and grab my other glue. So you could glue it from this side, just, you know, putting that up underneath there and gluing the sides down. However, I thought it was easier to pop that piece back out, put this down flat, and then get my glue all on those tabs from this angle. And I'm being fairly generous with the glue without, you know, getting too crazy with it, but we want to make sure this sticks and we don't have any issues with it. And again, I'm slightly out of frame on the bottom, I apologize. So you want this with the good side up, because that's going to be the bottom of your box on the inside that you're going to see. And I'm just pushing that piece down in there, pushing it down, and then burnishing around where those tabs will, on the bottom, will come over, and get that adhesive good and stuck down and everything. Just checking on the bottom to make sure it's good and adhered everywhere. I'm going around it one more time. And just kind of making sure it feels like everything's down. And then you can go back on this side, and you're going to have the corners where it overlaps that aren't really stuck down. You can go ahead, and I'm actually going to go in here and glue those down. It's not totally necessary because you will put another piece of paper over the bottom of this, either another solid piece or a pattern piece. It's entirely up to you because it is the bottom of the box. It still needs to be finished, but it doesn't necessarily need pattern paper. You can just do it with the solid cardstock. So you don't necessarily need to go in and glue those corners down. I just felt like it would be a good idea. But again, it's up to you because something else is going to go over the top of that where those aren't going to be an issue. Okay. And then because I did go ahead and glue those corners, I am just going to come in here with the bone folder one more time and burnish from the inside to get those corners good and stuck down. Okay, so there is our base. Now you want to grab the other piece of 9 1/4 by 9 1/4 chipboard that I had you set to the side. And what you're going to do is kind of lay it on the top. It should fit at edge to edge from one side, and from the other side it should slip down in. So see how that piece sits down inside the box, but from the other side it doesn't. It sits on top. The side where it sits down in, you want to mark back and front with a pencil, because when we make our lid and our hinged lid, we want to make sure when we go to attach it that we're attaching it with the side that's going to slide into that box on the right side. So I'm going to cut the chipboard with my fiskars trimmer, which I don't typically do unless I'm trying to get it super, super precise and even. So I'm just going to measure and double check. Yeah, my chipboard's 9 1/4. Half of 9 1/4 is going to be 4 5/8. So we are going to take that 9 1/4 piece of chipboard, and you're going to cut it to 4 5/8. Now, you may be wondering why I didn't have you do this from the first, and it's simply because, and then I'm just double checking with my ruler. I know my measurement's correct, but I just want to make sure. The reason I'm having you do it this way rather than just cut those pieces to that size to start with is it's easier to make sure you're orienting the base of your box right if you have that piece whole and then cut it in half after the fact. So when I cut that with the fiskars, you'll see how my blade has some black ink on it. I do that because that is an older blade. I would never cut paper with it. It's going to just, you know, make the edges really ragged. However, it works fine for chipboard. So I have that one. It just sits in a little basket here on my desk, and I use it just for chipboard. Okay. So now we need to mat the front and back of the box. So I'm just measuring, just making sure, you know, it's still going to be 9 1/4. It actually ended up being just a hair under. I think it ended up being like 9 and, not quite 9 1/8, but like 9 3/16 or something, by 2 1/8. So I'm going to cut 2 pieces from some of my scraps, 2 1/8 by 9, and it ended up being about 3/16. You don't want it to, of course, be too long, but you don't want it to be too short either. But this one, because we're going to put a couple more pieces in here of the chipboard on the inside for our easel mechanism, it doesn't have to be like super, super precise because part of it is going to be covered up. So I think I did go like 9 1/8, actually looking at this, the way I'm cutting it there. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and glue those on the sides where it says, where we have our front and back marked. Okay. And I'm just making sure it fits before I put glue on it and go to put it down. Okay. And it doesn't matter which one you do first, obviously, but so I'm just getting that down in there. And do the same thing on the other side. Okay, you can set that aside for a minute. So now we need 4 pieces of chipboard that are, I think I'm doing chipboard, hold on. Yes, I'm doing chipboard. Okay, you're going to need 4 pieces of chipboard that are 2 1/8 of an inch high. Okay, so it's 2 1/4 there. We want it 2 1/8. But the length, you're going to need to measure your box for that inside area here. So mine came out at 9 inches. Okay, because when you build a box, you're always going to have one side that's going to be slightly smaller. And in this case, that's where ours is going to be just a little bit different. So I'm going to take just some of my scraps and I'm going to cut these to 2 1/8. And all I'm doing is just basically making a light mark with the fiskars trimmer with my older blade that has the that I use for chipboard. And then we're going to finish cutting them with the craft knife. So cutting this 9 inches by 2 1/8. Okay, and I'm going to double, before I cut the rest of these, I'm going to just make sure. So I'm going to go ahead and get that end off. And I am just going to dry fit it in there and make sure it slides easily in on that end of the box, or on the side of the box there. Okay, so now that I know that's correct, I'm going to cut my other 3 pieces the same size. So 2 1/8 by 9 inches. Please, please, please measure the inside of your box before you just cut these to 9 inches. Yours may be slightly different, okay? If it's slightly under, that's fine, but you don't want to get this all assembled and wrapped and have it be too long and not fit, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and just, you know, mark on my chipboard with the older blade where I need to cut it with the craft knife. And I'm going to cut all 4 of these pieces. The other thing you're going to want to make sure, and it will make sense here in a minute, is that when you cut these, after you cut them, you're going to want to stack them up and make sure that they are all even. You don't want one to be, you know, I mean, if it's like a 1/16 of an inch, it's fine, but you don't want it to be like obviously one piece to be obviously be larger than the piece it's going to attach to, because otherwise it's going to give you a weird angle when you wrap this and put this inside the box. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut these down to size, finish it off with the craft knife. On all 3 pieces. And sometimes, depending on how hard I push down with the fiskars, I have to make a couple of passes with the craft knife. But if you're trying to get something really, really exact, where you're trying to make sure the pieces line up exactly, I seem to have better luck doing it this way than doing it with my big trimmer. Because as hard as I try, even standing up, sometimes that chipboard will slip just a tiny bit, and then it kind of throws it off. So here's where I'm going to stack these up, and I'm going to look and make sure that they are all the same height and that they are all the same width. Okay, so you're going to glue 2 and 2, just because this is going to give you a little bit of extra meat for what is essentially the railing that when the box is closed, that the lid of the box sits on. I think I'm grabbing my other glue that doesn't have the metal tip on it, so it comes out a little faster. So this is essentially going to be the railing that, because I don't know what else you would call it, that the lid of the box is going to sit on when it's closed. We are going to cut a notch into this for our easel for the stopper for the easel. Okay, so I'm just pushing this down on my mat to make sure I've got those lined up flush with each other, so that there's not anything extra hanging over, or that they're not crooked or anything of that nature. I'm going to do the second one here. I am using a fair amount of glue there just because, you want to make sure these are good and stuck. Okay. So let's get that, and then let me grab the ruler so that we can measure. And I want to look at my finished box because I'm not sure how deep I went on that notch. See how this is notched in here? That's what we're going to do to this chipboard prior to wrapping it. Okay, so my notch is like 3/16 of an inch. Okay, so between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch. Okay, and then I think I pulled it back into measure because it should have been 4 inches in. Yeah, there we go, 4 inches. Just had to make sure. So what I'm going to do, and I actually am going to grab a better ruler here in a second, but what I'm going to do is measure from one end, 4 inches, and I'm going to make a notch with my knife. Okay, and I mean not when I say notch, I'm not trying to go all the way through 2 layers of chipboard in one shot. I'm just marking it so I know where that ends. And then I started to do this with this ruler, not thinking it doesn't have 16ths on it. And then it dawns on me about now that I have another ruler. Well, maybe not just yet. So 3/16 is going to be between the 1/8 and the 1/4 inch mark if your ruler doesn't have the 16th of an inch marks on it. And at some point here I grabbed the other ruler because I was not quite happy with how this is working. Then it dawns on me, hey, I've got a better ruler. Oh my God. Oh, and this is why I don't do voiceovers, because it's just a mess. All right, so this one has the 16th of an inch marks. So I'm lined up on my 4 inch, finding my 3/16, and then I'm just holding that ruler getting it flush with the end so that I know my line is going to be straight when I go to trim this. And I'm just marking all the way across there to get a good little groove in there so that I can move my ruler and then go with my craft knife. And it's going to take you several passes to get all the way through the 2 layers of the chipboard. If you want to, it might be easier to do one of these and get that notch cut into one of those pieces before you glue it together. And then once you glue it, you just follow along and cut out the second notch. But that's entirely up to you. I did it this way just to make sure that, you know, my 2 pieces for my sides were even and squared up and everything, and then did this piece, but it's up to you. You could do it the other way. Okay, so once you've got that, I'm just going to line it up with the other one, get them lined up to the end, edge to edge, which if you've been very careful and they're all 4 the same size, you won't have a problem. And then the same thing, I'm just going to mark where that notch starts and across for the long piece that's being cut out. Just marking it with my knife. And then I can move that other piece off the top and then do the same thing again. You know, it'll take you 4 or 5 passes with the knife to get through that. But you very easily can get through this. It's not difficult. For some reason, I wasn't like getting the very end of that. I don't know why. Probably need to change the blade in that knife, honestly. I don't know the last time I did it. I think it's been a while. All right, so I'm going to cut some cardstock to wrap those, and I'll be right back. All right, so to wrap our little notched pieces, you're going to need 2 pieces of cardstock, 11 inches by 4 1/8. I did go ahead and prep the backs of those with score tape. When you do this, you're going to you want to make sure that they are opposite of each other. So you can see here when I pull it back, my notch faces one way on one piece and the opposite way on the other. This will make more sense once you go to put them in the box, but you need that notch so that they're on opposite sides. And then and when you wrap these, that you want to make sure that you've got it turned so that when you have them wrapped and you put them in your box, that they're opposite sides so that your notch lines up. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and put those down just like you do when you're doing your covers or your spines or whatever. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to take one of these. You're going to do this the same on both of them. I'm only going to show you on one of them. You're going to use the chipboard to fold the cardstock around the chipboard. And since this is 2 layers, it's going to be a little bit different than what you're used to. And then go ahead and do those creases. You're going to do the same thing on this one, even where the notch is, because you're going to kind of figure this out here in a minute that we're going to adjust that section of it. But this end where the notch, there is no notch, you're going to do just like you would wrap your album cover. Okay, so for the bottom, we're going to go ahead and cut the squares out just like we normally do. And make sure, you know, that we've mitered those corners enough, because you're going to go ahead and wrap that piece in, and then you can do it on the corner that is not next to the notch. Okay. Mitering these is going to be a little bit trickier. It doesn't, especially for the bottom there, that long side, doesn't have to be perfect because literally nobody's going to see it. You want to be a little bit more careful with your top because that will be seen. I literally couldn't figure out how to fold this. I don't know why. It's been a long weekend. Okay, so I'm getting those mitered and that side mitered. So you can go ahead. Okay, so those are going to fold over like so. That corner, you're going to go ahead and miter, but you're not going to do it on the fold lines. You're just going to put your scissors to the tip, that bottom corner of the chipboard, and cut. Okay, rather than trying to do it where it folded, because we don't really have a fold right there. Okay, so then what I'm doing is I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to line up the tip of the scissors in the corner of that notch. Okay, see how I've got it there? And I'm going to cut. And then I'm going to go to the corner, the top corner, and I'm going to cut again. In that corner, you don't need to angle it too much. Okay, so what you're going to have there is you're going to have like a little triangle in there that you can fold in on that raw edge on your notch. And I think I end up kind of doing it with the bone folder just because it's going to be a little bit weird. And really, it's not a piece you're going to see. So if this part of it isn't, you know, perfect, it's fine. You're not going to see it. And then we're just going to go ahead and wrap this piece just like you always do. So I'm just folding that over on that piece because it was shorter, using the bone folder to kind of burnish it down. And then I'm just going to come in with my glue and put down all of my tabs just like we do when we're making an album cover. So I like to start with the short sides and glue those down first. So again, I'm just running my glue next to the chipboard and then on the tab, my little squiggle, and then I'm using the bone folder to push that up and over and burnish it down. See there how I had to go for the compression glove and the arthritis cream, and my hand is still killing me. And then we'll do the long flap, and then we'll do those two short flaps that are on the top. And I can't glue with my left hand apparently because I tried. And it's just incredibly awkward. I just need to practice maybe and do it that way. Okay, now we're going to do those two small flaps. I'm doing the bottom one first. Excuse me. Excuse me again. Oh my gosh. Okay, we're going to get that flap, and that's where I'm using the bone folder to push that little tiny corner piece in and up and get it glued over there. Like I said, if that piece of it's not perfect, the way it faces, you're not going to see it. So don't, stress too much about that. If it ends up not getting completely wrapped, it'll be fine. So then you've got your box, front and back. You're going to put that in there so that that notch is towards the back. Okay? I'm going to go ahead and wrap the other one off camera. I'll be right back. All right, so I've got both my side pieces, and we're just going to glue those in the box, making sure that the notch is facing towards the back of the box. And at this point, there's no clear back or front. Just make sure that those notches are both facing the same direction. So I'm going to be, again, fairly generous with my glue to make sure this gets good and stuck. Put that in there, put it down, and then I'm going to wipe up too much glue because, of course. And then I'm just going to set it down, use the table to help burnish that down, to be able to push down against the table and burnish that down and make sure it's good and stuck. And then we'll do the other side. And get that one in there as well. So now you've got your little rails in there that are going to help with your easel mechanism, that are going to be your stops for your easel mechanism, and will also keep that lid that's just a hair narrower than it would normally be from falling down into your box. Okay, so let me get some glue cleaned up here, and we will get the top, the hinged top, put together. All right, so we've got our two pieces for our lid. First piece we're going to wrap just like a cover piece. So you need a piece of cardstock that is going to be 11 1/4 by 6 5/8. And I did go ahead and prep this with score tape. Because it's going to be wrapped, it's not going to matter that I've got like a little 1/4 inch section right there in the middle that's not covered. It'll be fine. Get the backing off of that with my little pokey tool. Okay. And again, we're just going to use the chipboard to fold. We're going to wrap this just like we do a cover. So you're going to fold this around the edges. You're going to cut out the squares and then miter the corners and then glue those down. All right, so for our next piece, you need a piece of cardstock 11 1/4 by 11 1/2. Going to go ahead and use our 1/2 inch spacers. And I've gone ahead and gotten score tape on the back of this. So get the backing off of that. Of course, I didn't burnish it down enough, like always, so it tries to lift up on me the first try. Okay, you get that put down there. And burnish that down. And then you're going to go ahead and fold around like you do with a cover. On the short side, I've got something on my bone folder. That's why I don't usually use that one. Okay, so then we're going to fold the sides, and I realize this is going to be a little bit awkward because you have that long tail essentially on this piece. Kind of go over it with your hand first, and then with the bone folder. That seemed to work a little bit better. No idea why I'm still using that one. I don't care for it typically, but for some reason I grabbed it. Okay, so we're going to do our small fold and then our longer piece, like so. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and cut the corners out on the top, the small corners, just like you normally would. And miter those corners like you would normally. So I'm going to fold in and get my edges like I do when building a cover. Okay, and then the sides there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and glue that flap down. Use the bone folder to push it up against the chipboard and over. Okay. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking my bone folder, the good one, what we're going to fold around and crease where the chipboard ends there. Okay. We're going to flip it over, and then we are going to burnish along the edge of that chipboard, and we're going to push that cardstock down over the chipboard. Okay. Turn it back over, and I'm going to cut at an angle up to the corner of the chipboard. Okay. And then I'm going to cut up along the fold line and remove that side. Okay. Do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to cut it an angle into the corner of the chipboard next to where our fold line is, and then cut from the bottom up along that fold line and remove that piece. Okay. And then go ahead and fold it over and get those corners mitered to make sure there's nothing, sticking out on that corner. Okay. And then we can go ahead and put those side tabs down as well. So burnish up against the side of the chipboard and then up and over and burnish it down. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to burnish that one more time because as you're playing with it, it kind of tries to pop out. We're going to put that piece down on the back there, flush up against the side of the other chipboard. Okay? Kind of holding it up to make sure that that long piece, nothing's sticking out. I'm just going to just take a hair off of this, just very carefully with my scissors, just to make sure nothing's hanging out over the side because clearly you don't want that. And do that on both sides. Okay. For that one more time, make sure it's very, very clear where that line is. Line that up one more time. Make sure you're edge to edge, top to bottom, lined up exactly, and that you are pushed up as tight against the other piece of chipboard as you can get. I'm just going to go ahead and get some glue on here. I'm going to line that up. I'm pushing it up against the other piece as tight as I can get it. Okay. I'm going to burnish it down from the opposite side. Make sure it's good and stuck down. Okay. Again, just making sure. And then I'm just folding that last little tab over against the chipboard to kind of get it started where it needs to go. And then I'm going to fold it back on itself. And just go along the edge with the bone folder and burnish that down. Excuse me again. And then I am just going to miter the edges from the edge of the chipboard just so that when we attach it to the box and it gets matted over, it's not going to be noticeable. So I'm going to bring my box in. We're going to line this up on top. It should fit on there perfectly. And I'm just going to set it up on edge, make sure it's lined up where I want it, hold it in place, getting the better glue bottle that doesn't have the fine tip on it. Bear with me, there we go. And I'm just getting glue in there on that tab. Okay, making sure that my lid is lined up. And then opening that up and pushing down against the table to burnish that down. And there's your hinged lid. All set. I still grabbed that other bone folder that had crap on it. Okay, so there's your hinged lid. It opens up like so. Sets in against that notch for your easel. And there you go. That's it. Now at this point you would go ahead and mat. You would mat the bottom of the box, the one unfinished piece on the inside, but that's it. There's your box. Yep, just mat that and you're done. You can decorate. Alright, so that is the base of your box. Like I said, this folds up and catches right there on those edges, on those little notched in pieces on the side to make it into the easel box. When it's flat, it just lays completely flat. It kind of sinks in just a tiny bit on the sides, flush with the sides like it's supposed to. For the piece on the front, I just took, because this is 9 1/4 by 9 1/4, I took an 8 by 8 piece of lightweight cardstock, and I actually inked it, and then did all of the decorating, and then I think I actually used hot glue to put it onto the front of the box. Before I did that, I of course matted both pieces here. Let me grab the actual finished box. So both of these pieces, what I did is I cut a mat 9 1/8 by 9 1/8 and then cut it in half. And when I matted it, I went right up to the edge on both of those pieces. So when it's closed, it almost looks seamless. There's not really much of a gap there. What do you want to call it? The easel piece, the top piece. Like I said, 8 by 8 lightweight chipboard. I did just mat the back of it. There's still glue on it, so there you go. With the same green cardstock. And then double matted it with both the gold and then the green. And then I did my fussy cutting and I kind of built my scene. You can't really see it. I intended for there to be more of this showing, and it kind of, as I was decorating, kind of got covered up. But I had a, let me find it. What's left of it anyway? This moss sheet from the dollar store that I cut a strip for the top and a strip for the bottom, and I just kind of, cut it kind of wavy, hot glued that down, and then all of my stuff went on top of that. So you don't see it as much as I had intended, but it's still there, and it gives it some more depth and some more texture. These little purple flowers and this little light leaf thing are from Hobby Lobby, I believe. These flowers are, I think, Prima. I'm not sure. I was just pulling stuff out of my stash because I'm not, I don't use flowers super often, but I do buy them because you never know. But I literally just cut out the Irish blessing off of that particular sheet of paper that had the little house and then the flowers, and I tore the edges of it and then inked it. When you guys get this Ireland paper, it tears and it inks just beautifully. Like I was just blown away. Distressed the edges of the letter and of course my flowers that I fussy cut and inked all of those. Same thing with the house here. I did use a little bit of foam tape just to kind of pop it up where it was touching paper on paper, but on top of this moss stuff I did use hot glue. Of course, I inked and matted my sides, just did solid on the bottom. After I'd matted my sides, that was when I hot glued my little graphic 45 feet onto the box. And then these were some little birdie flowers I've had in my stash for I don't even know how long. In fact, those might be little birdie as well. They might not be Prima. I think those might be little birdie as well. But there you go. So, this box is very versatile. You can use this clearly, of course. I mean, obviously, any of my projects, you can use any paper collection you want to. But it's just kind of a fun one. It's big enough that you could make, a nice album to go in here or a folio. And because the lid opens all the way, and we do need to mat that here. That's all I did on this one, which somehow I'm not sure what I did. These two pieces are opposite on this one. I'm not sure what I did or how I did it. I really had to kind of sit here today and figure out what I did to make this work because I don't remember, and it's only been a week, which is really sad. But yeah, you'll just want to cover that one up as well. You can mat the entire inside of this if you want to. I didn't think it was necessary because it's just going to sit like this and potentially hold an album in here. So I didn't think it was necessary to mat the inside of this. So I will hold on to this one and use this with another project at another time. But that's how you make the box. Of course, this whole top piece of it, whatever floats your boat. You could do this and use the bunny paper. It would be adorable. You could do the same type of project with the kitchen when it comes out here on Friday. It comes out Friday, March 5th on the website. It will be available for sale. Because this would be a fun one. You could do the kitchen and then just keep recipes that you use all the time, just loose in this box, and it would still be something cute that you could put on your counter or on like a, you know, what they call them, sideboard or a hutch or something in your kitchen, and it would be a really fun little decor piece, but also functional because you can put your recipes and things in there. So thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time.